So we've looked at atomic size, but what happens when we look at ionic size? And so ionic size meaning what happens when something forms an ion? When an atom forms an ion, is it going to get larger or smaller? It's as simple as this. If something gains electrons, then it's going to be larger than the atom. All right? And I know we just talked about how, the protons and electrons, and if there's more sucking in. The thing is, when something gains an electron, okay, like chlorine versus a chlorine ion, they both have 17 protons. So since they both have 17 protons, the pulling in, the positives compared to those electrons, is the same. So by putting more, they do repel a little bit more. So again, you get your atom. This is the same pull, right, on the nucleus. So by putting more electrons, they're going to repel a little bit, and they're going to get the atom, the ion, a little bit larger than the ion. The same and opposite thing, I guess you could say, with the if it loses electrons. So if you lose an electron, then it's going to get smaller than the atom. Same pull, less electrons. That same pull has a stronger effect on the fewer electrons. So if I were to say circle the larger of the two, then in this case chlorine is larger, the chlorine ion is larger, because remember, a minus charge means it's gained an electron. So this is larger. And then which one's larger of the two? The sodium atom is larger than the sodium ion. Okay? Now, what happens when you have two different ions, not an ion versus its own atom? So in the case here, we have oxygen versus the oxygen ion and potassium's ion. Well, in this case, you need to take a look at what the ion behaves or acts like. Okay? And what that basically means is, the noble gas, right? Because atoms are forming ions so that they have that stable electron configuration like a noble gas. So what we're going to look at here is circle the larger of the two. Well, oxygen with a 2- charge. 2- means it's gained 2 electrons, which means oxygen has 8 normally. It's acting like neon. Okay? Potassium has 19 electrons normally. When it forms its ion, it now has 18, so it's acting like argon. Which one's larger? If I say circle the larger of the two, well, neon or argon. Now you're comparing these two. Argon is larger, so therefore potassium's ion is larger than neon. Okay? The only other little wrinkle is what happens when they are acting like the same thing. So let's say chlorine's ion versus potassium's ion. Well, chlorine's ion is going to act like argon, as is potassium's ion. I'm kind of indifferent to it. We really could say that they are similar or the same size. They're likely not going to. What we would need to take a look at is there are 17 protons here and there are 19 protons here. So which one's going to suck in more? Well, if they both have 18 electrons, right, because if they lose or gain to form those 18 electrons, they both have 18 electrons, but which one of them has a greater pull? This one does. Potassium does, because it has 19 protons. So it's going to suck those 18 a little bit more. So this one's going to get a little bit, the potassium is going to get a little bit smaller. So again, if I say which one circle the larger, we would say this one, if you really want to compare those two. So that's ionic size.